Let's look at how to turn 2D files into 3D files. First thing I'll do, set all supported image types to the type of file we want to see. Make sure that Use as Image is checked. Let's pick a JPEG. Import it. This is a bracket. And this is an engineering drawing. They are oftentimes done as plan, section, and elevation groups, but they're just 2D. We drag this in. Let's check the dimension. I'll type L for line, and I'll draw a line from endpoint to endpoint. There's nothing to snap to. We're just going over top of the image. And you can see at the bottom it's 16 and 9/16 inches. I draw the line, then take the tape measure, click between the two endpoints, and then type in the new value that we want, 10 inches. And it will resize the entire model so that line is 10 inches. Come in and check. Indeed, it's 10 inches exactly. We'll erase that. We'll set the background to a gray color. JPEG files come in as a sheet of paper, opaque sheet of paper with the drawing on it. Let's look at one other type of image file that we could bring in. A PDF file of the same bracket. When brought in, the PDFs degrade a little bit more than the JPEG files, so I like the JPEG. To trace over an image file, you just pick points based on how the image looks on your screen. There's no points to snap to. We'll just pick reasonable points, center of the lines, push-pull these two things up into volume, and we'll see the difference between JPEG and PDF. The PDF comes in with a transparent background. The JPEG does not. And this looks at first glance like it would be helpful, but if we're going to draw from those endpoints, it's still telling us it's on the face in the image. The only way to reach those points, the transparent background acts as a surface as well. Let's go to the X-ray mode button. Now we can reach through the image and touch endpoints. So we'll draw from that endpoint to this endpoint, we'll orbit back around, and you can see, I'll turn X-ray back off, you can see it actually drew it at that exact point. So that's the difference between JPEG and PDF. I'm going to delete that. To make this usable, we need to take the 2D file and make it such that it can be manipulated in 3D. Right-click on the image and explode it. When you explode an image file, it turns into a face with the image painted on that face. I'm going to type R for rectangle, draw a rectangle around the pieces of the image that we want to use. We could do the same for the bracket part too. Spacebar for select, double click on that image, portion of the image, and make a group of it. And do that for each of the images that we want to use. So I'm just double clicking, making group. Then triple click on the surface and delete it. Hit the delete key. Now these are individual pieces that can be manipulated in 3D. Move tool, and I'll go from the top. Click on this point. We want to make sure they're lined up. So that point corresponds to this endpoint right here. And indeed it was drawn that way, so it is correct. You can see the red axis direction. But if it weren't, we would click there to place it, and then we would click to pull it away. Back out in the red. That makes sure those points line up. Now rotate it 90 degrees and move it upwards in the blue. We can now work against these in 3D space between them. Go to a top view and set the camera to parallel projection, so we're straight down from the top. name this a view called front. Add a scene. Let's bring up the scene manager. We'll name this first one. We don't want hidden geometry saved. We'll call this one front. Let's go to the side view. I just guessed. So, yep, that was correct. So we'll make this one a new view. Plus, we'll add it. Name it side. We can now work between the front and the side. I also like to have a third view that I call isometric, so I can check things as I'm going. ISO. So we have isometric front and side. We'll move the ISO down so we can jump between front and side. That's a little annoying, having it progress slowly to the next view, so let's set that animation to 0. Set the transition off. Scene delay of 0. There's our side, front, and ISO view. We're ready to get started drawing now. R for rectangle. I'm going to just look at the image and try to hit the center line of the black marks. P for push-pull. We'll start push-pulling it. We'll go to the side view, and in the side view we'll move it up until it matches the midline of that line of the bracket. Click to place it. Orbit from below, click to begin push-pulling it. Go back to the side view. Pull down so you're in the middle of the line, and there's the beginnings of our bracket out in 3D space. It was constrained left and right by the front view, so we don't have to worry about that. Tap the Option key to copy up a copy, and we'll go to the midline of that drawing line. Click on that side, pull it. We've now created, I've assigned the letter T to transparency because I use it so often for the X-ray mode. So we'll turn on transparency and we'll clean up the lines we don't need. There's our bracket, but it does have a radius to it. Go to a side view. A for arc, and we'll draw an arc from here to the same distance. That's what the magenta indicates. Double click to place that arc. And we'll also place one on this end, on this side. Double click to place it. There's our geometry. We can E and erase that edge. Don't need it. P to push pull that fillet to the back, red on edge. We can erase that. We don't need it. P to push pull this fillet to the back edge. And now with the erase tool, if you hold down the Option key or Control on the PC, it smooths those edges. Turns them off because they're smooth. There's our bracket. We go to the front view. There's the front view of the bracket, side view, and there's the ISO view. The geometry will start being created in 3D space right before our eyes. Go to the front view, turn on transparency, and we want to put the bolt hole in. So we'll zoom in. R for rectangle, make sure it's on the face. I'm holding shift so it stays on the face. We just trace right over it. Then A for an arc. We'll make it a half circle. The arc, we want to make sure that we don't put too many facets in it. It came in as 12. That's wrong. E for erase, A for arc, and we're going to tell it we want 4 sides. Type the letter 4 and hit enter, and now when we draw it, it's a much more rough arc. Won't use as many polygons. E for erase, and then M, and we're going to move. Tap Control to make a copy, and we're going to make a copy of the hole over above the other hole, so they're the same size. Orbit so that we can see it in 3D. Turn transparency off, and push-pull that down through the face to the opposite face. Creates the hole for us. At this point, triple click on the bracket and make a component of it, or a group. We'll make a group since it's not repeated anywhere. And now we can begin drawing the next part of the bracket. Go to the front view, R for a rectangle. Let's draw this one in. I'm going to hold Shift so I stay on the face in the group and use this edge as an indicator of how far to draw it. It drew it down on that plane. There's our bracket. This time we'll move this up in the air. So I begin moving it in the blue. I can jump to the side view. Make sure that I'm in the blue direction. You see the line? So I'm just going to line it up with the middle of the hand-drawn line image. Push-pull that up, go to side view, and there's the side bracket. We'll go back to a front view. We want this to be a component. Spacebar, triple click on it, and let's make it a component. The reason it's a component, we want to make sure replace selection with component is checked. We want to create it as a component because there are 4 of them. There's 2 here in the front view, and on each side there's 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. Let's copy this over, but we want this to be copied over. Tap Control or Option, but it wants to be mirrored. So we'll place it, then orbit, and use the Scale tool. Scale tool. Click to begin, and then hold down Control or Option, and it'll scale about the midpoint of the component. So we'll pull it until it's -1. That's a mirror image. Go to the front view. There's our 2 brackets, so let's select them. Move them up in the, oh, they already are. Go to the side view, so we'll make copies of those. M, tap Control. We'll just make copies straight up in the air. Now those need to have a hole in them. Here's the disadvantage of using JPEG files and PDF files. When we go in to edit this group or this component, and we go to front view to look at the holes, if we turn on transparency, we can't really see the JPEG image because it gets faded to the background. As we turn off the rest of the model, it doesn't even help. So that's the one disadvantage of using a JPEG file. Nothing to worry about. Let's just draw a circle. C, and a circle we want to make maybe 8-sided. So we'll type 8. Start at the center and position it so that it looks correct. Select this and move it up in the blue direction. Hold down Shift so that it's going to constrain it to the vertical. So we're bringing it off the surface of the image onto the surface of the component. Select the circle, cut it, so Control X or Edit Cut. Cut it to the clipboard, double click to edit the component, and paste it back in. Whoops. Now notice when we go paste, it gets put on the cursor. The powerful thing in SketchUp is to use paste in place. Paste in place puts it back in exactly where it was relative to the world origin, but into this component. It's a quick way of repositioning things within a component without having them shift in space. P to push pull, cut a hole through it, spacebar to get outside, and there's all our brackets laid out in space with their proper holes. Because they were repeated, they get changed. Let's go to the side view and draw in this side bracket. L for line, we're going to start here. Again, finding the middle of the line. Come across, up, and it was inferring across from this starting point. Now I'll hold down Shift to make sure it stays on the face, and it's constrained on that face till we're going along that line. Let go of Shift, come back down, it's inferring. Touch it back, we've drawn that in. We'll go ahead and put in the arc at this point. A for an arc, put the arc in right on the thing we just drew, double click. So there's the chamfer, or the fillet, and we also have some circles we need to do. If we go to transparency, X-ray mode, as long as it's not within a component or group, we can see it quite nicely. Draw the circle on, C, still 8-sided, that's good. Click to place it, and let's check it. Come on, C for the circle. There we go. I don't know why it disappeared. And we'll make a copy of that to this hole. P to push pull, and then just tap the delete key to delete those circles out. Turn off transparency. We're ready to make the bracket. Select the bracket and move it in space in the red direction, and then we'll jump to the front view. We're going to move that over in the red. You can see the red dotted line. Click to place it there. Orbit just slightly, and we're going to P to push pull it. Go back to front view. Zoom in. We've placed that bracket. Select that, triple click, and this is going to be a component as well, isn't it? Because it's repeated on the other side. So we'll make a component, and we'll just make sure replace with selected. And again, this will be a mirrored component, but let's verify to check. This is the downside of using hand drawings. It's not quite, this face should be at the flush with this face of that plate. So let's move it now. Move it from that face, hold down Shift, touch the end point. Now we know that it lines up exactly. Now we'll make a copy of it. So move a copy from this endpoint, tap Control or Option, and touch that endpoint. But we want that to be a mirrored version, so we'll right click on it and we'll flip along the components. I think it's green. So there are our brackets. There's one more plate, but this will be all one unit. Let's select it and make a component of that. It's a good insertion point. Maybe we'll change it to be right there. There's a bracket that slides between these plates. We can see it down here. There's a pipe and a plate and then a plate around it. Draw in this plate. Push-pull it up. Draw a circle on it. Let's make it 12 segments, 12S. Go from the midpoint to the midpoint. There's our big circle. Make a group of that. It's letter G for me. Draw a plate. Move all the stuff up based on the plate. So we'll move the plate from that endpoint. Go to a side view. And that plate is going to sit right there. and it will be the thickness, P for push-pull, of that. Then this will move down to be centered on it. So we'll move it from the midpoint, go up in the blue, hold shift, touch the midpoint of that plate, and now all of this can become one thing. There's one more thing to do. Draw a circle, midpoint of that, and it's a little bit thinner, or I'm sorry, smaller radius. Triple click on all that, use Control X, and then come in and paste in place to put it back in space correctly. And there's our bracket. Let's actually make both of these component. Create it. And there's your bracket generated from a 2D file with all the pieces and parts set correctly. And this piece can move up and down independently in there. The drawback is it's approximate. We're approximating every line by the center of the width of this dark black line. So image files are not optimal to draw from, but you can model from them quite nicely. Now watch the version of modeling this bracket using the CAD file. You'll see that it moves along much more efficiently.